trying to help people understand that we are all colleagues. You know, none of these people are my opponents. None of you are my opponents. We're all colleagues in liberty. And I think we were successful because in 1988, when Ron Paul got the nomination, instead of being booed off the floor, his opponent, Russell Means, was given such a large standing ovation that Ron Paul would complain that even though he was the nominee, it was Russell Means who got all the applause. So we think we were pretty successful in that. Now the other thing I'd like to talk about is another qualification, and that's experience with libertarian campaigns. And I emphasize libertarian because as libertarians we're treated considerably differently than the other candidates, as you well know. I was fortunate in that in the early 90s when I ran for State Board of Education in Michigan, I received one of the first big media endorsements that the Libertarian Party had ever gotten. The Detroit News endorsed me in a partisan race for State Board of Education. Now part of that is because one of the things that I do is I'm able to explain liberty in sound bites. That's one of the things that you gain from doing a dozen or so libertarian campaigns. Many of you know I do a column for the Advocates for Self-Government, and from that came the book Short Answers to the Tough Questions, which is available here for those who would like to get one, or available largely online at the Advocate site. Now I've also gotten a great campaign team. Some names that you might recognize: Jeff Neal, former LNC chair, who is the treasurer and back office person for the Bad Narrow campaign, and is with us in pre-nomination and post-nomination. And of course, I don't need to introduce you to Lee Wright, my campaign manager, you know him well, and Thomas Hill, my volunteer coordinator. And my husband, of course, Ray Carr, who most of you also know, former CEO of a company in Charlotte and a pharmacist by training, is my circuit and partner in this, and he is today in Minnesota after being in Wisconsin yesterday. He got the hard road. Now, one of the things that's very good about having experience in libertarian campaigns is you've had all the rotten tomatoes thrown at you already, at least figuratively. And that's important because if you watched the Hannity and Combs show the other night, you saw Bob Barr on it, and you saw him pressed to the wall on the drug issue. And if you haven't seen it, you ought to take a look. It's up on his website, and you can get an example of how hard they're going to press our candidate, whoever it is, on the drug issue, on gay rights, on abortion. You're going to be nailed to the wall. And you need to know how to keep your cool and give good answers. And that's what experience in a libertarian campaign brings you. And that's what I hope to bring to the table. Now the other issue around experience is, can you represent the hardcore libertarian position in a way that excites the American people rather than repels them? And that's something I've been working on for a long time. In fact, I literally wrote the book on it. Healing Our World, as you know, talks about a lot of hundreds of real-life examples of how liberty works in the real world. And that's the area in which we often get taken to task because we aren't able to show that liberty works. And that's how we lost liberty, I believe, in the first place. What happened in the 20th century is we thought, oh, liberty is great, it's wonderful, but it just isn't practical. It doesn't work in the real world. Well, that, my friends, is not true, as you well know. I think we need a candidate who can make that point and make it well. And I think that I have that qualification. In fact, I can't even go to a convention without somebody coming up to me and saying, I'm a libertarian because I read Healing Our World. And usually there's a spouse nearby or another family member who pipes up and says, yes, I've been trying for years to convert this person, and it was your book that did it. And I think the reason that Healing is so successful and reaches groups that we don't normally reach, like Christians, New Agers, liberals, environmentalists, is that it speaks from the heart as well as the head. And that's something that we've had trouble doing in the Libertarian Party. And it's something that we're going to need to do in this upcoming election, because we're going to be talking about issues like universal health care. And what we're going to be told is that we have all these people who are suffering, and we need to help them by having socialized medicine, universal health care. Now, I'm particularly well qualified to speak to that issue, because because I've been in the healthcare professions for many years. Most of you know I was a drug researcher, and I've actually taken it upon myself to do original research and regulation of drugs. In fact, some of that research shows that the 1962 amendments to the Food and Drug Act are responsible for over 80% of our current pharmaceutical costs. That's huge. And my co-author, Jarrett Wolstein, and myself actually went on the radio and wrote a book called Lethal Compassion, Why Government Medicine is the Cure That Kills. And we fought universal health care in the 90s when Hillary Clinton wanted to impose it on the American people. And I don't know if you remember, but most of the articles you saw, most of the radio shows you saw, most of the research you saw came from libertarian sources. It's not generally acknowledged, but we libertarians really stopped universal health care. And that's something we can be very proud of. Now, of course, we know very well that the Democrats are going to be running either a black man or a white woman at the top of the ticket. Now, of course, here in the Libertarian Party, we aren't concerned about race or gender. We're concerned about qualifications. But you know, there's a temptation out there. And when I was over in one of the conventions, I won't mention which one, I had a libertarian lady come up to me who's been a long-term activist. I've seen her at many conventions. And she said, you know, if Hillary gets the nomination, I think I'm going to have to vote for her because I really want to vote for a woman. Now, if we're hearing this from libertarian women, how much so does the rest of the population want to vote for a woman? So it's something we should consider. Should we change the face of the Libertarian Party for this election? I throw it out there as a possibility. Because women, or 50% of the population, are the biggest niche market of all. And of course, we're not just after votes this election. To grow the party, we want activists in the party. The biggest activists are the Ron Paul supporters. I have a relationship with Ron Paul. He endorsed my book, Healing Our World. He wrote President Bush trying to encourage him to accept me as the FDA commissioner back in the 90s, when I thought perhaps I could do a de facto privatization of that agency. And of course, I intend to, in my campaign, talk about the Health Freedom Protection Act, Dr. Paul's bill, which actually will go a long way to knock the teeth out of the FDA. So we'll be working, again, to keep his name out there, and hopefully inviting his activists to vote for our state and local candidates because they don't have enough Ron Paul Republicans to vote for. And then, if Dr. Paul does not get the nomination, I will suggest that instead of writing in his name, which will not be counted, will not be reported, that they give us a protest vote, vote Libertarian for a presidential candidate, and put us in the double digits for change. Finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about media. You know, if you followed the Ron Paul campaign, you know he was blacked out very early in the game. And that's what they do to our candidates every time. It doesn't matter what kind of name recognition they have. I think Dr. Paul's campaign has shown us that the internet is where our base is. We'll be focusing a lot of attention there. Not that we're going to ignore the major media, but we're going to recognize that the free press is on the web. And that's where we're going to put a lot of attention and hopefully stimulate just as much action as Dr. Paul did. I'd like to close by just reminding you that in considering your choice for presidential nominee, please consider leadership. Consider consistent hardcore positions. And consider a person that has long-term experience in libertarian campaigns.